Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. Germany's historic flood continues to rise as rescue teams search for hundreds reported missing. Prime Minister Boris Johnson acknowledges difficult days ahead as England's restrictions ease on Monday. And medics and transport workers fear a pingdemic as the NHS COVID-19 app sends many staff into self-isolation. The devastating floods across Western Germany and Belgium have now claimed the lives of over 120 people, and the death toll keeps rising. Search and rescue teams continue to look for over 1,000 more. NTD's Eddie Aiken has the story.
More than 1,000 people are missing in flood-stricken regions of Western Germany and Belgium on Friday. Waters are still rising, as is the death toll. Entire communities lie in ruins after swollen rivers swept through German towns and villages, like here in the village of Schuld.
It was terrible not being able to help people. People were waving at us from windows. Houses were collapsing to the left and right of them.
Over 100 people are reported dead in Germany's worst mass loss of life in decades. In Erfstadt, several houses collapsed on Friday morning, and authorities fear more casualties. Roads around the town were impassable after being washed away. Rescue crews tried to reach residents by boat and helicopter. Over 100,000 households are without power on Friday, and mobile phone networks collapsed in some regions. Authorities worry that dams could overflow or even burst, spilling uncontrolled floods onto communities below. Armin Laschet, one of the candidates to succeed German Chancellor Merkel, is at centre stage as governor of North Rhine-Westphalia, where over 20 towns and districts took extensive damage.
Our state is experiencing a flood disaster of historic dimensions. We will repair houses, rebuild bridges, repair traffic routes, but the lives lost in the floods are irreplaceable.
In Belgium, over 20 are reported dead as several towns and villages are submerged.
I saw the 1957 floods. It was not as impressive as this. This is unheard of.
The flooding in Belgium caused transport chaos with embankments of train lines washed away. Eddie Aiken, NTD News.
A heat wave is forecast for much of England from Saturday night through to Tuesday morning, with temperatures soaring as high as 31 degrees Celsius. Public Health England have issued a heat health alert and are urging everyone to take care of those at risk from the summer heat, including young children, the elderly, and those with underlying health conditions. The nation reaches the final weekend before Monday's lifting of remaining restrictions. Prime Minister Boris Johnson gave a word of caution yesterday as he acknowledges difficult days ahead. NTD's Pingdemic has the story.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson urges people not to throw caution to the wind as England's restrictions ease on Monday. On Thursday, the UK reported over 48,000 new cases, the highest since mid-January. 63 deaths were reported, the biggest daily increase since late March.
There are difficult days and weeks ahead as we deal with the current wave of the Delta variant, and there will be, sadly, more hospitalizations and more deaths. But with every day that goes by, we build higher the wall of vaccine-acquired immunity.
From July the 19th, masks are not compulsory, but leading supermarkets have said they will encourage customers to wear masks. NHS staff and police will also continue to wear masks.
But what I can say is that if we are careful and we continue to respect this disease and its continuing menace, then it's highly probable, and all the scientists, or almost all, are agreed on this, highly probable the worst of the pandemic is behind us.
Ministers have been criticized for sending out mixed messages as legislation is replaced by official guidance and a voluntary approach. But the latest guidance says shoppers will still be expected to wear face masks and table service will continue in pubs and bars. Kost Jimenez, NTD News.
Police say the abusive graffiti sprayed on a mural of England footballer Marcus Rashford was not of a racial nature. Officers are keeping an open mind over the motive for defacing the Manchester artwork. It followed England's penalty shootout loss in the Euro 2020 final. Rashford and 2 other players missed penalties on Sunday. No arrests have yet been made. Police are reviewing CCTV footage and awaiting forensic test results from the spray paint. The artist has since repainted his mural of the England and the Manchester United player. And in other news, medics and transport workers are among those issuing warnings about a possible pingdemic, as they fear many workers may be forced into self-isolation when restrictions end on Monday. NTD's Kost Jimenez brings us this report.
NHS staff and transport workers are calling on the government to rethink the delay in easing quarantine rules for fully vaccinated people. While most lockdown restrictions are set to end Monday, the quarantine rules won't be relaxed for a month. During the first week of July, the NHS COVID-19 app sent out more than 530,000 alerts in England and Wales. Employers have warned of a looming staff crisis. Transport unions say there will be dire consequences next week when staff are pinged with instructions to self-isolate as infections rise. Medical professional bodies are also warning that self-isolation orders will increase pressure on the NHS. The government says it recognizes the significant impact on businesses. Ministers are considering making the NHS app less sensitive. The government is also carrying out pilots to see whether people can take a test instead of isolating after being pinged. Kost Jimenez, NTD News.
Researchers are calling for more mental health support for older people, as a study shows they experienced the greatest rise in anxiety during the first lockdown. NTD's Eddie Aitken has the story.
A study into the impact of lockdown finds wide-ranging effects on the UK's population's mental health and well-being. UK and US researchers compared data from pre-pandemic tests with data obtained during the first national lockdown. They found the largest changes were in anxiety levels. Before the pandemic, 24% of people felt anxious or on edge at least several times a week. During lockdown, this rose to 33%. The proportion of people who responded never to this question fell from 18% to 8%. The anxiety levels of adults aged 60 to 80 saw the greatest change. This age group also reported increased levels of depression during the first lockdown. The study also finds respondents experienced positive effects during the lockdown. Over 70% said they were spending less and saving more. 3/4 of people noted a more pleasant environment, with 70% reporting more wildlife. 65% of respondents reported a greater sense of community. Many people also reported sleeping more and being less tired. Researchers suggest older people should be prioritized for mental health support as restrictions are eased. The study is believed to be the largest of its kind. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Pro-Beijing lawmakers in Hong Kong are urging the government to ban meditation practice Falun Gong under the region's controversial national security law. NTD's Noel Woodrow speaks with experts for their reaction.
Freedoms in Hong Kong have seen a dramatic fall in the aftermath of Beijing's draconian national security law imposed last summer. The law criminalises acts deemed by the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, as subversion, succession, terrorist activities or collusion with foreign forces. During a Legislative Council session last week, pro-Beijing Hong Kong politician Elizabeth Quat claimed that the spiritual group was involved in spreading subversive opinions through its public activities and called on authorities to ban the practice. I asked Baroness Helena Kennedy, who is a co-chair of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China and a lawyer, for her views on the Hong Kong lawmakers' claims.
So it's the easiest thing in the world to do is to say that people's views are subversive, that people are in some way plotting against the national interest. That is one of the things that authoritarian regimes say about anybody who is perhaps speaking truth to power. And so we have to also celebrate the idea that compassion in the end and truth win the day. And I hope it's sooner rather than later.
I also spoke with the co-founder and CEO of Hong Kong Watch, which speaks out in defence of Hong Kong's fundamental freedoms and human rights.
What's your opinion of what's happening and what concerns do you have?
Well, I think it's extremely concerning. It's not, I have to say, a surprise, because ever since the imposition of the national security law just over a year ago, pretty much all of Hong Kong's freedoms have been dismantled, and so one always knew that when freedom itself is being dismantled, sooner or later a group like practitioners of Falun Gong, who are so severely persecuted in the mainland, we always knew it was highly likely that they would face difficulties in Hong Kong.
Rogers says the speed of the authorities' crackdown on freedoms is a lot faster than he had feared. He predicts the region will see greater pressure and restrictions placed on certain aspects of faith or religion, such as preaching.
And other sort of activities that are part of freedom of religion that may have a more political component to them. And I think it's highly likely that Falun Gong, which is so particularly and intensely disliked by the CCP, that the pressure will grow on Falun Gong in Hong Kong very rapidly, I fear.
Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, involves meditative exercises and a set of moral teachings based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion and tolerance. Falun Gong has been systematically suppressed by the Chinese Communist Party for 22 years in mainland China, but not in Hong Kong. Jim Shannon, who was the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for International Freedom of Religion or Belief, gave us this statement. Falun Gong members who practice their religion and who set up booths in Hong Kong's busiest districts do so in peaceful and unobstructed fashion. They continually tell the true story of China's human rights abuse against Falun Gong in China. China is guilty in the eye of the free world, carrying out atrocities and evil intentions against peaceful Falun Gong. I condemn these actions of China in the strongest terms. Since 1999, millions of Falun Gong adherents have been detained or imprisoned in mainland China, where they suffer torture, abuse and even forced organ harvesting. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
In a debate on organ tourism, members of the House of Lords condemned the Chinese regime's persecution of religious minorities and its horrendous practice of harvesting organs from live prisoners. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us the details.
A bill on organ tourism went through its second reading in the House of Lords on Friday. If passed, it will prevent UK citizens from travelling to countries such as China for organ transplants. According to NHS statistics, between 2010 and July 2020, 29 British patients were found to have received organ transplants in China. Lord Hunt sponsored the bill. He says it's necessary to prevent Britons from being complicit in the Chinese regime's crime of organ harvesting.
When I first heard about forced organ harvesting in China from the noble Lord Alton, I was horrified. Organ donation is a precious act of saving a life. But forced organ harvesting is commercialised murder, and without doubt among the worst of crimes.
Lord Hunt said the Real Bodies exhibition, which was held in the UK, sourced bodies from the Chinese city of Dalian, with no identity documents or consent. The bill will require imported bodies on display to meet the same consent requirements as those sourced from the UK.
The commercial exploitation of body parts in all its forms is surely unethical and unsavoury. When it's combined with mass killing by an authoritarian state, we cannot stand by and do nothing.
Lord Alton, a cross-bench peer, noted that next week will mark 22 years since the Chinese regime began its brutal persecution of Falun Gong practitioners, who have accounted for most of the victims of forced organ harvesting.
July the 22nd will mark 22 years since the start of the persecution of the Falun Gong. Jiang Zemin established the 610 office to eradicate, his word, to eradicate Falun Gong, practiced at the time by 70 million Chinese people. It recorded undercover phone calls during investigations that Chinese doctors had said that Jiang Zemin gave direct instructions to harvest organs from Falun Gong.
The UK government recognised organ tourism is an important issue, but it is already addressed by existing laws. But Lord Hunt stressed that explicit legislation is needed to stop such atrocities from continuing. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Coming up, Dutch crime TV reporter Peter de Vries has died just over a week after being shot in Amsterdam. Find out more after the break.